Hello. We'll see you after. Jazz by Toni Morrison. And every February is Toni Morrison month in the book club. We have a new website. It is sbgbookclub.org. This is a friendly reminder that we will be um, shutting down smartbrowngirl.com at the end of this month. I would love if everyone who was an insider before signed back up to be an insider. If you were an insider before, also check your email because you might have a coupon code. That would be really helpful. But purchasing the syllabi and any of the products that we sell in the book club is deeply helpful as it helps to support the work that we do behind the scenes. You know, I be logging in to TikTok and like seeing all these book content creators post about books they're reading. And I'm like, wow, this book list looks familiar. And then they'll be like, yeah, I read with your book club. And it's like, it'd be crickets in the book club. I don't know whether people are reading with us or not, whether they like the work we do or not, whether it's helpful or not. Letting us know would be helpful. So let's get into this second discussion of jazz. I did the audio book on Audible, which some people have noted is abridged, and I've been working my way through reading the physical copy of the book, which I know I'm in grad school, so we finna finish this coming week. But we gotta get through this discussion because next month we're reading Passing by Nella Larson. That's a really quick and easy read, and we'll be probably doing a viewing of Tessa Thompson's production of Passing as well. But that should be interesting. We got to wrap this Toni Morrison month up. I feel like what happens mostly with Toni Morrison, though, is why did I type in jazz and everything but jazz comes up? That people tend to watch on the other side. Right? Toni Morrison does take a little bit of time to ease into. It's not always the easiest of reading selections. Well, it's definitely not the easiest of our reading selections in the book club. And so I think sometimes the Toni Morrison selections tend to be the books that people mention they're reading after the fact, which is fine because there is no there's no semester, there's no timetable per se. There's no grading, right? There's no shade in you reading something a year after we've read it and then coming back to the book club to talk to us about it. Like, we love that, and we definitely want to encourage, if you are reading anything that we have read in the 2+ years that this has been a book club, let us know. Let us re-engage. Let's have that discussion. Okay? Let's get it. Yeah, so let's just get into these questions. This is going to be a short conversation because I have a million and one things to do today. A hearty har. I can't believe I'm doing all this in grad school. I'm in grad school either. I don't know how. We're hanging on by a shoestring. But, there's a lot of things that have been happening behind the scenes. And because I had to cancel all the insider memberships because of our 501(c) status, and we really do need people to sign back up because we have to be, our tax regulations are different. We are a public nonprofit, so things just had to be migrated over to a new bank account, and I couldn't do that on my I couldn't do that manually, right? So we've just taken a big financial hit in the book club, and I definitely need everyone's support and signing up as an insider so we can pay everybody. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? All right, so in the second half of the book, we are getting the backstory on Violet and her husband and even Dorcas. And yeah, we are going back to their hometowns and getting a little bit more of their story. And something that I said last discussion, Toni actually talks about in the intro for this book, in that, following to Beloved, which is what we read last year, that Beloved's focus was on mother love, and she intended to examine couple love, the reconfiguration of the self in such relationships, the negotiation between individuality and commitment to another, and also how, like, the what she calls the duress and emotional disfigurement that a slave society imposed, um like how love is a perpetual mourning or haunting, and how such relationships were altered later in or by a certain level of liberty. So, where Beloved takes place in the slave era, Jazz takes place post emancipation, relatively close. I am reading quite a few books on this era. I just put my other book. Oh, I just finished. This is an academic text, but I just finished To Joy, My Freedom, by Tara Hunter. And, in the exploration track book we read last month of Sadia Hartman's Beautiful Lives, uh, Wayward Lives, Beautiful Experiments, definitely hit on this idea about what does it mean to have a moment of autonomy, a moment of liberation post emancipation that is then quickly taken away from you. The white society quickly reconfigures to disenfranchise the Black community, but for a brief moment in this Reconstruction period and then briefly after, because Jim Crow really comes about in the 1890s, you have this moment of like if I just do certain things, if I just play my cards this way, success and this new life and the possibility of dreams seems formidable. And so, we're coming into like the jazz era, obviously in jazz, and we're still 50, 60 years outside of emancipation. And that's really a period of where reform is happening, middle class reform is happening, and this idea of respectability and presenting yourself a certain way and being this certain person uh is happening. And I think so Toni is definitely taking a thread through her books, and I'm really happy that we're reading jazz this year, because we'll be reading The Bluest Eye next year. And yeah, we started off with Sula. That was our first read in 20. Can you believe it's been like 2 years? In 20, it all seems like a blur. It's a blur. We did Sula the first year, and I mean, Sula is even shorter than jazz, and it definitely, because the language, Toni's language and the motifs is something else. But like when you really get into Sula, as we got into it in the book club, it was like oh my god, oh my god, like I related to Sula so much, and I'm so happy that we read it. Yes, Jazz is part of a paradise. Is part of a paradise. Jazz is part of a trilogy. So it starts with Beloved, which we read last year, and we had a scholar come back in. I'm really happy with the work we did on Beloved, because Beloved is a historical fiction that is very, very influential in the canon of Black women's history. So if you are in grad school, as I am, it'll definitely come up time and time again. And so I'm really happy that we had Professor Edwards sit down and talk about both Mama's Babies, Papa's Maybe, Hortense Spillers, and Beloved, and it was really great. And then jazz, maybe at some point Paradise will probably get to down the line. It's funny because Oprah's book club did Paradise when I was like in high school, and my grandmother read it and she said it was her least favorite Toni Morrison book. So I have never read Paradise. I don't know what my little wig that I threw on is doing here. Okay, let's fix that. Let's fix that. It does. This is why I personally do not recommend Toni Morrison to people that are getting back into reading. And I think because we talk about Toni so much, people like are inclined to want to do it because they want to feel like, well, if I'm reading something, I am reading something. I am reading a thing. And I'm always like, it's okay to read easy fiction. So I would, depending on the person, and I've been meaning to do like a little reel or something about what my suggestions would be, depending on, if you're inclined to want to get back into reading. Because for most people, I wouldn't recommend Toni Morrison to be the book you use to get back into it, because you will fall off. I feel like Toni needs to be read in community, and there's so much to take from it. And this is a really beautifully, like, I just love the rhythm of jazz. I love the landscape it's built on. And I think this definitely speaks to another book that we've read by her, Playing in the Dark and the Literary Whiteness and the Literary Imagination. And she talks about how jazz is used by white authors, like the black art and jazz have been used by white authors to signify uh racial language without directly speaking to it. And so I definitely get a lot of the points that were discussed in the essays in Playing in the Dark in jazz. Sometimes I think me being in grad school has made running this book club a little tough. And sometimes I do feel bad about, did we do enough for the books we read? I feel like we could do more. But who has time here? All right. So we are on page 21 of the book club. I wonder if I can share a screen here. Oh, but then you're just going to see a Chrome tab. Huh. Oh, it makes me small. Okay, let's get into this. Let's do the syllabus this way. Okay. Chapter 6 through 10 is the second half. Let's start here. What was Violet's relationship like with her mother, Rose Dear, and her grandmother, True Belle? And then how did Rose Dear's death impact Violet? I love that we get all the viewers on YouTube. I don't know what's happening in a Facebook group. Ugh. I feel so abandoned by y'all. So unloved. Oh my. Though I thought the way that Violet and Joe's relationship came to be really kind of spoke to the limits of, at that time period, what the possibilities of love represented, right? And that partnering was a lot more about safety, a lot more about access to possibilities, more so than an emotional connection, because they just kind of fell into a rhythm. We have not talked about Golden Gray yet, but if you want to chime in, because we do have a question here about what connection does the story of Golden Gray have within the context of the novel as a whole? And Aliyah Clark is saying that, I think Golden Gray was an integral part of her relationship with True Belle. I wonder if we have all these things on the screen. How does it go? Does it get a little crazy? Oh, you can't see the previous comments. New comments will display here. Yeah. Let me look and see. I thought the description of Golden Gray was fascinating. And it's always like you have to read between the lines with Toni. Like, what is she getting at? And him looking at that girl and the harm she could do alive. Yeah, I think Golden Gray gets introduced around page 138, 139. The death True Belle was dying took 11 years, long enough for her to rescue Rose, bury her, see the husband return 4 times, make 6 quilts, 13 shifts, and fill Violet's head with stories about her white lady and the light of both their lives. A beautiful young man whose name, for obvious reasons, was Golden Gray. Gray, because that was Vera Louise's last name. Much, much later, it was also the color of his eyes. And golden, because like the pink birth skin because after the pink birth skin disappeared, along with the down on his head, his flesh was radiantly golden, and floppy yellow curls covered his head and the lobes of his ears. It was nowhere as blonde as Vera Louise's hair once was, but its sunlight color, its determined curliness endeared him to her. Not all at once. It took a while, but True Belle laughed out loud the minute she laid eyes on him, and thereafter every day for 18 years. Oh man, Chloe, why'd you hate him? And I wonder, does this relationship between True Belle um and Vera Louise speak to colorism and how that then impacts Violet's life? But Chloe, you absolutely have to tell us, why did you hate Golden Gray? Yeah, but Golden Gray clearly got a colored pappy, the near father, who was never told, and somehow True Belle kept that secret for Vera Louise. Hmm. He didn't give a damn about Wild Woman and just rescued her so that he could brag about his good deed. He was literally just a cold ass white man. You know, when I was reading it, I definitely, if any of you watched Underground by the Barry Jenkins Amazon Prime series, I was thinking of the white male character and the scene where he throws a little black boy down the well, and he just simply did things because of his whim, because he wanted to, and because it fit the narrative of himself that he wanted to create, not because there was any like reasoning or thought to it. So yeah, True Belle was able to care for Golden in a way she couldn't for her own grandkids. I think Violet picked up that love, and that's why she would fantasize about him even they never met, even though they never met. Hmm. You know, it's interesting how like this idea about like, is it easier to love someone who faces less trauma in their lives, who faces less barriers in life, because then you don't have to be overly concerned about them? Is it you know, is that, and is that what then Violet is witnessing? Why am I tripping over my words? Is that then what Violet is witnessing in the difference between her her relationship with True Belle and True Belle's supposed relationship with Golden Gray? Do we get any new insight in this section about who is the narrator of jazz and who it may be? And how did this switch from country life to city living influence the progression of their marriage? I think the pursuit of even getting to New York, it rode on so much, and it happened, you know, with a sudden change, because one partner didn't really desire to leave the South. And another partner was pining away at the possibility of going to New York, because New York was the land of possibility. It was the land of hope and success. And I think this is actually a common trope in Black literature that covers this time period, about people coming to Harlem, coming to New York, and kind of getting eaten alive. I mean, we definitely see it happening. Am I making this up? You know when you read too many things and everything collides? I feel like this happened in The Vanishing Half. What were we reading? And a character, yeah, a couple goes to the Northeast. And the husband, oh no, that's not Vanishing Half. That is in Ya Jesse's Homegoing, where one chapter is about a woman from the South, one of the ancestors, and her husband ends up passing for white and abandoning her. And then she's trying to become a singer, and then we have this grotesque scene that happens in the club, and she shifts back to the church, and it just feels like, you know, Violet and Joe have this experience where it just kind of slowly beats them down. They don't make any sudden shifts, but the mundaneness of it and the stuckness of it kind of meets them in their bedroom. I felt like, wasn't there a passage in here where, not that one didn't want to go, but Joe was a little slower to motivate the move? Yeah, she definitely does not glamorize. And okay, yeah, I just blocked whatever that account was. She does not glamorize the Harlem Renaissance at all. I remember, I'm sorry, I listened to the audiobook, so everything kind of like runs together. Hmm. What do you think of Dorcas and Felix's friendship? And do you agree with Felix's opinion of Joe and Dorcas's relationship? I feel like Felix spotted the not necessarily the danger, but she just knew that, like, what was the point of this relationship, and that Dorcas was kind of walking on the edge by being with this older man, and what does he really do or provide for her? Yeah, it's true. Violet and Joe worked their butts off when they got to, look at me, I'm trying not to cuss. Worked their asses off when they got to New York City, and they had to push through all that terrible inflation. Yeah, and I think the harshness of New York just kind of met them in their home. And it's so sad. Dorcas should have been prettier than she was. She just missed. She had all the ingredients of pretty too. Long hair, wavy, half good, half bad. Light skin, never used skin bleach, nice shape, but it missed somehow. And if you looked at each thing, you would admire that thing, the hair, the color, the shape. Altogether, it didn't fit. Guys looked at her, whistled, and called out fresh stuff when she walked down the street. But then they stopped. Nothing came of it. So maybe it's Felix who's narrating the story then? When you get into like the interior life of Felix and her opinions of Joe and Dorcas, and then the upbringing and the way her family warned her about, hanging out with someone like Dorcas, do you then get the sense that it might be Felix who has like this holistic narration in jazz? Violet and Joe did work. Sorry, I didn't say. Dorcas makes me think of the chick in passing. Oh, you think the narrator was a hater? Are we dealing with the unreliable narrator here? I actually thought, well, the audiobook definitely gives you a different perspective, and I need to go back and fully read this book on my own in the physical copy, because the way Toni reads it is, it's as if the narrator has the most sense out of everybody. As if the narrator just was kind of like, you know, a very matter of fact person who wasn't team anyone, right? She did, she saw fault in Violet, she saw fault in Dorcas, she saw fault in Joe, she saw fault in Dorcas's aunt. The only person who didn't have any fault was Felixs. And so that's why it's kind of like, I wonder if the narrator of this book was intended to be Felixs. I don't know. How does Joe's understanding of desirability impact his perception of Dorcas and other women in the neighborhood? The narrator was a lady who rented him the room, but how would she know everybody? Malvon, the aunt. How does True Belle and Vera Louise's relationship give insight into non-heteronormative parenting dynamics? Well, yeah, I don't know. But from reading their mail, is the lady who rented the room gonna know their backstory? I mean, I guess people in that time did write letters, but mm, mm, somebody from Facebook had wanted to talk about Golden Gray. I guess we can kind of skip around some of these questions, because Golden Gray's journey to find his father, and then him being upset. Man, this definitely, I've been on that kick talking about the biracial TikTokers, and to get into jazz in a time period where you did not want to be Black, you did not want to be associated with Blackness. There was no social currency for Golden Gray to earn from acknowledging that he had a Black father. But it's ironic that he would have such an issue with the biological parent being Black, but he had, when he was raised by a Black woman, he was raised by True Belle. And then, if anybody wants to share their further perception of Golden Gray, feel free to chime in. Ugh. The passage where we get Dorcas's new relationship and how it compares to her relationship with Joe, and sort of the insecurity that is manifested. I mean, it not only Golden Gray's story not only shows how anti-Black back then was, but how historically it was this idea that being Black is cool, being Black is a social currency. I want to attach myself to Blackness, even if I have a white phenotype. That's a new cultural phenomenon, singular. That is a new cultural phenomenon, because for a long stretch of history, you wanted to be post blanc. You know what I mean? You wanted to be white. So you wanted to have white DNA. And now we have this reshifting. What do you believe was the catalyst for Joe deciding to murder Dorcas? Huh. I wonder, is this the... Maybe his reality caught up to his fantasy. I think he was in disbelief when he saw her with the guy, and he has never been so vulnerable with anyone else. And Aliyah saying he felt like his choice was being taken away. He also said he chose Dorcas, not Violet. You know, I think Toni's framing almost like, no, it doesn't make light of it, but it kind of lifts this weight off of the idea that, like, how we, I don't think I'm using the right words, right? Like, when you initially read it, it's like, how sad. But, like, this man literally kills this young girl because he can't have her. Like, yeah, killing someone because you want their love to never end. No, she left you. And so, like, you had a fit of rage. And because of the way Black life isn't valued in this time period, like, you just go back to your wife? Huh? Yeah, like, I do think I mean, but I think Toni does a really good job of making you interrogate what got us here. You know, and as a person who's invested in abolition, I do think you do have to think about, you can't just think about, oh, this person did wrong, punish them, dispose of them. You do have to think about, if we are going to prevent crime, we have to think about what actually got us here and attacking those systems versus just punishing the individual. He could have been jealous that he could never be what he once had with Dorcas. I mean, yeah, yeah, just like, buddy, this is, I, for Dorcas to enter into a new relationship and almost like, oh, it was giving Cassie from Euphoria almost, you know, like, I need to be controlled. I want you to tell me what you like or don't like. And the fact that she had someone who was honest in ways that Joe wasn't honest, and who saw her as a person, not as an object necessarily. Yeah, it was interesting how she received that, and how she had been informed, probably in dating an older man, that she needed to kind of bend herself. Girl, Dorcas in them later scenes was giving Cassie 5 o'clock in the morning, talking about Nate. Nate, tell me what you want me to do. Absolutely. I totally agree that Joe was a deeply depraved man, and Dorcas represented a sense of freedom he didn't have as a Black man. But what's crazy is that Dorcas ended up in that situation because she didn't really have much freedom either. And so we have all these people who are trying to express autonomy because, you know, slavery is a recent memory, and you're no longer a slave, so you believe that you're liberated, you believe that you have freedom, but finding that you don't really. Because Violet blamed Dorcas. That's why she took a knife to her casket. You know what I mean? So she's not thinking in the context that her husband is a violent man. She's thinking in the context that, you know, this little girl seduced him. It's crazy, right? He could have been jealous that he could never be with her. He could be a midlife crisis, feeling like he missed out on some things from his youth. Man, there is so much to pull away. All right, who was everyone's okay? If you were Violet, what would you have done differently? And I want everyone to give me who was the character that they felt most in line with. Who was giving what? Hmm. Oh, you identify with Dorcas's aunt? I mean, she seemed to be like the most sane person. Yeah. The question was who was the who what were your thoughts about Violet? If you were Violet, what would you do differently? And also, who did you identify with the most? I'm still wondering what magical words Joe whispered to Dorcas on his way out of her aunt's apartment, but I guess she didn't need much convincing whether either way because she was emotionally vulnerable. My God. If I was Violet, I would have kept the birds. Seemed like the only thing that kept her together. It did. But also, was giving I know why the cage bird sings. I was giving I know why the cage bird sings. Absolutely. Yeah, Violet should have cut off Joe, but also like what was her other options at that point? Like what else could she do? I absolutely am probably most in line with Violet, LOL, because how can you not be black in that time and not be I mean, yeah, how could you not? She needed mental help, poor thing. I think everybody needed mental help here though. Like, man, but like who would be your therapy? Who would be the therapist to black people during this time period? Like what? What help could they get? Okay, okay. Tomorrow, girl. It's quite crazy. All right. I'm gonna give a few more minutes before we log off here. For women in that era, it wasn't easy to be without a man, a sad time in many ways. Absolutely. I think part of why Violet stayed with her wasn't because of craziness, but like in that time period, what did it like if she was to report him, she was also going to be criminalized. And not necessarily because of what she did, but that's just because of what it was seen as older single Black women, and how she dared to live her life. The next book is Passing by Nella Parsons. I will post about it tomorrow. Sorry, y'all. But we just in grad school doing a whole lot of things. Okay. We have a GoFundMe for the book club. Haven't even announced it. Going crazy. Get the candles. I need to light. I've had these whole candles sitting on my desk because I've already gone through 2 sets of these. Here's one that I've mostly Togetherness. Matter of fact, I'm gonna light this one while I get some work done. Focus is my favorite one. It really does help you focus. SBGbookclub.com. Let's get into it. All right. The new website. Do it. Tell your friends. Comment in the book club. Let us know if what we're doing is helpful, if you appreciate it. Even feedback. Even if there's things you would like to see done differently, let us know. We're here for y'all. But I'm going to log off right now and have a good Wednesday. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And see you next month as we read Nella Parsons.